Israel. She started a happiness club there years ago. So I think I think he was sort of a pioneer of the fact that we can control our illness through our mind. That was one of the first openings that I've seen where that was possible, where I saw the creation of that.
I think for many of us that was a great breakthrough, and in keeping with Bernie's observations, it was a story. It was a story about his personal recovery. Right. And what he discovered and how he overcame his spondylosis. And, so it is a powerfully moving story. And again, at that time, that was a very radical statement considering the prominence he had and still has in people's minds. Was a very powerful book at that time.
Exactly.
One of the terms you use, the GWAS, that people should be familiar with, the Genome-Wide Association Studies. And I'm not going to list all the things you mentioned, but, I mean, as we see these things happening, then, again, it becomes part of medicine, part of training, part of caring for people. Because that also, I mean, it's, all this is integrated in a negative way that many physicians, when I talk to them, why did you become a doctor? Draw yourself working as a doctor. There's no patient in the room. They're sitting behind a desk with the diploma on the wall. And some of them don't even show people in the picture, just instruments and computers. And, my sort of sick sense of humor, I mean, I've visited, some doctors where they put you in the examining room and the only things that are on the wall are what you're going to die of. Diabetes, breast cancer, colon cancer, heart disease, and you're sitting there looking. And then I have other doctors where there's a lovely paint, wall, a light blue with outdoor scenes on it. And all of these things affect our survival, in the hospital or in a doctor's office. And I think that's why we have to get back to the basics of what you're talking about and understand people and what's, in us, and not blame people for getting sick, but look at their, what you call the biochemical pathways and deal with them and change their body. I
would just underscore that. I mean, what you're talking about is how you influence a person's perception of themselves. So in a sterile exam room, table, glaring white lights, you feel helpless, you feel hopeless, you feel passive. And in an environment that's animated, that has trees and nature and beautiful paintings and good music, you feel animated. And I think, one analogy I think of is much of what we call medicine is like a 60-second television ad. If you think about anything you see on television, there's a diagnosis. So you have a condition. It's depression or the blahs or the yellow teeth, whatever it happens to be. And a few seconds later, you have a diagnosis. Oh, well, this is your problem. And it's always an external problem. You don't have a particular car. You're not looking at the right kind of television, whatever it is. And then within a few seconds, you get the car, you get the television, you get the toothpaste, whatever it is. And then the fourth stage is a resolution, an immediate happiness. You're engaged with friends. You're going to live longer. You're just running around the block. Now, if you think about that, that is an incredibly insidious message that we get thousands of times a week that tells us that our problem is external to ourselves, the cure is external to ourselves, and once you obtain this physical thing, you are made better. And it always leaves out the person. There's no person in an advertisement. It's just about the thing that you are supposed to go out and purchase. And I think that's a very destructive, really insidious effect on us, our patients, and everything we do in healthcare. It's not about what is outside of ourselves. It's about what is inside.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking at immunity is one of the things you discuss, and autoimmune disease, where the hyperactive system. I can remember sitting with Louise Hay on the stage, and a young woman in the audience got up who had an autoimmune disease, and Louise interrupted her and said, "Who do you have to express your anger at?" And she immediately said, "My mother." And, you know, those are the things that woke me up. It's like, why did you ask her that? But right. I had a woman come into my office who had scleroderma. And I thought it was almost symbolic of her life. You know, it's like she built thick skin to protect herself. But alcoholic parents and she's the only one alive from her family, and they told their family to commit suicide, and they did, and the kids did, except for her. But I didn't know how to help her, and I learned what was important. I just listened to her. And she would scream and yell and rant and rave every time she came in the office about her horrible childhood. And I sat there not knowing what the hell to do. And I realized that's what she needed, because she got it all out of her system. And to quote her, I let love into my prison, and it changed every negative item in it, meaning the experiences in my life, and turned them into something meaningful. And she went on living for many, many decades. She died recently. But, I mean, she outlived her doctor, you know, who was telling her how quickly she was going to die. And I learned a lot from her, you know, letting love into my prison and what. And one study, because how this fits what you're talking about, Harvard students were asked, did your parents love you? If they said no, 98% had suffered a major illness by middle age. If they said yes, only 24% had. So what is happening to their genes or their susceptibility because they didn't grow up with love?
Right. It's having a very negative impact. There's one study I cite in the book out of Harvard that they took individuals who had never meditated, and they gave them a basic instruction in mindfulness meditation, had them meditate for 15 minutes, and tested their telomeres, or the genetic marker for life expectancy, before and after 15 minutes of meditation. One time had never meditated before. And what they found is that the telomere elongated and became more intact after 15 minutes. So it shows you how delicate and positively we can influence this direct impact on our life expectancy. Now, one session of meditation is not going to have you living longer, but the repeated meditation or repeated regenerative state that a person, the anabolic or regenerative states that are engendered by meditation, by prayer, by positive thought, will produce a greater state of health, will produce a greater state of longevity. So we can see that these switches, if you will, are very delicate and easily influenced. One other study that, in fact,
Ken, if you would hold that thought for just a moment, we're going to take a quick break, and
Great.
We will be right back.
Join Dr. Bernie Siegel on Mind Health Matters every week, Wednesday through Friday, 12 p.m. and 12 a.m. Eastern Time on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Bernie will draw from his inspirational personal journey, offering us special nuggets of his sacred wisdom. Listen in as Bernie reminds us to be fully engaged in life.
Omega Institute, offering workshops, retreats, and online learning dedicated to awakening the best in the human spirit. For 40 years, Omega has been a gathering place for great thinkers, creative talent, spiritual teachers, and social visionaries. With 390 workshops to choose from, Omega offers something for everyone. Located in Rhinebeck, New York, just 90 miles north of New York City, Omega's natural environment and quiet pace allow for extraordinary experiences to unfold. Learn more at eomega.org.
Dr. Bernie Siegel's writings and the 12 books he's published so far reflect his passion to reach people struggling with all of life's challenges. His latest, A Book of Miracles, inspiring true stories of healing, gratitude, and love, is both riveting and belief-expanding. Bernie has produced wonderful resources for everyone, like 365 prescriptions for the soul, daily messages of inspiration, hope, and love, and faith, hope, and healing. Bernie's books also include those like Love, Magic, and Mud Pies, a great resource for parents, and delightful loving stories like Buddy's Candle to help children of all ages cope with the loss of a loved one, be it a pet or a parent. To purchase Bernie's books, CDs, or DVDs, go to BernieSiegelMD.com. And while you're there, empower the mind, body, and spirit with Bernie's heartwarming articles.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
All right. We take a break, and I, being a senior, stopped thinking about what we were talking about.
Well, but Bernie, that is the whole point of meditation. So you're just in meditation. You've done it.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
Well.
Yeah, because you know this is how I test myself. I take the dog for a walk early every morning, and it's a good long walk. And I realize some mornings I start out my meditation, prayer for others, all kinds of calming, beautiful things, and that's when I know I'm in a good state. And then there are other mornings I'm halfway through the walk, and I say, "Hey, you didn't meditate yet. You haven't." And I realize, yeah, you're right. You're so busy thinking about what's happening today or the weather or
Right.
And if we get into that state,
absolutely,
whatever you call it, it's such a difference in your body and your life.
Well, I think that state has so much to do with the present moment, and that's what meditation is, and also the idea of not letting our thinking control us. So before we started the show, you, Bernie, and Dr. Ken Pelletier were talking, and you were thinking of a person up in Boston. I think you were thinking of Dr. Herbert Benson. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
that's right.
So he was a pioneer in this area as well that we're talking about.
Yeah, he was the one. He called me one day and said, "I want to thank you." I said, "What are you talking about? We haven't met. I don't know." He said, "I want to thank you for all that you've done because now I have permission to do things. I don't seem as crazy as I used to." And so we became friends.
Right.
But it's just so obvious. And yet again, Ken, when I would talk about, like let's say I talk about that lady and how she was brought up and got autoimmune disease, they'd say to me, "Oh, you're blaming your patients." I'd say, "What are you talking about? I'm blaming." "Well, you're asking them what's going on in their life." Instead of seeing it as participating, the reaction of many doctors was, "You're blaming your patients. See, it's their fault they got sick," if you say what's happening in the last couple of years in your life. And it's just so crazy. Yet, you're not blaming them. You're trying to get them to look at it. Oh, here's something else you may think about with genes and problems. I've learned somewhere to just say to people, "What are you experiencing?" I don't want to hear your diagnosis. What are you experiencing? "Oh, my migraine headaches, pressure. Oh, cancer, failure." And I would say, how do those words fit your life? And the pressure was her marriage. And instead of being admitted to the hospital, she went home to straighten out her marriage with her husband. And the failure wasn't about cancer in my body. It was about her parents committing suicide, so she must have been a failure as a child. And, when you think of the impact of those things, damn well they're affecting the genes. And that kind of person, if they can change their life and find what one young lady called me a CD, a chosen dad, that if we can reparent our patients, make them feel loved, and that somebody sees them as worthy, it makes one hell of a difference. Yeah, where do you see love affecting genes?
Oh, love is unequivocally a positive influence in the sense of when a person is in a loving, positive, happy state, literally all of the regenerative processes in the body, the heart rate, hormonal levels, the electrical activity in the brain shifts instantaneously. And when I say instantaneously, it is literally in a matter of seconds from catabolic or destructive to anabolic or regenerative biochemistry. So love has an unequivocal positive impact. Love of others, of self, of animals, of plants. There's a great study